And it started. So Rupali, take us away.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the multi-agent RL reading group. Today we have Quentin with us. Quentin is a postdoctoral researcher at Mila. He's currently working with Gauthier, Gidel, and Simon Lacoste-Julien. He works on automatic differentiation, games, and representation learning. Prior to his postdoc, he completed his PhD at INRIA Paris-Saclay with Joseph Salmon and Alexandre Cramfort. He worked on optimization and statistical aspects of high-dimensional sparse linear regression applied to brain signals reconstruction. So today, Quentin is going to be talking about his paper on the limitations of ELO. Real-world games are transitive and not additive. So take it away, Quentin.
Okay, so thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks a lot for the very nice introduction. So I'm Quentin Bertrand, and today I will talk about the limitation of the ELO score and how it will obviously fail for cyclic game, but even for some real transitive games, the ELO score can completely fail to properly rank players. So this is joint work with Gauthier Gidel, who is an assistant prof at Mila, University of Montreal. He's really the specialist in game theory. And this is also joint work with Gauthier, with a specialist of reinforcement learning and applied to StarCraft. He's really into the StarCraft game. He's watching a lot and even commenting some game, I guess. And so for myself, so initially I'm not a multi-agent RL specialist, but I played a lot chess when I was younger. So this is also one of the main motivation for me to work on this paper. So yes, feel free to ask any question at any time. I really think that the larger the number of questions, the better the talk. So yeah, if you have any questions, just let me know. Okay. So the outline for today is pretty standard. Okay, I'm first gonna define and recall what is the ELO score. Just show some basic limitation of the ELO score and describe, our approach and some experiments. Okay, so this is pretty basic for today. So just to see and to agree on what we talk about, I'm just gonna take some symmetric zero-sum games. Okay, so how it is defined is just defined by a matrix P here. Okay, and it's symmetric in the sense that the probability of beating one player Pij is just 1 minus Pji. Okay, this is just a way of saying that if Pij represents the probability of player I beating player J, it has to have some structure for it to have some meaning. And we simply say that player I beats player J if the probability is greater than 7.5. Okay, so this is just a basic definition to say what I'm going to talk about. And okay, examples of such probability matrix, you can think of synthetic data. Okay, so if you just take a vector in Rn, you can easily construct such type of matrix. Okay, here sigma is a sigmoid function, just to be sure that it sends all the entries in 0, 1. So basically, you can construct such empirical payoff matrix with using synthetic data, but more interestingly, you can construct them using real data. So for what we did, we used chess and StarCraft data. So I don't know if you know lead chess, which is a website for online to play online. You can scrap all the game between, let's say, elite players, and you can construct this type of empirical payoff matrix between players. Okay, so you take all the games between pairs of players, you average the score, and you obtain the probability of winning for one player against another. So you can do it for StarCraft and for chess. Okay, you have some online databases. So okay, so is it okay for everyone?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Okay, and so what is the Elo or the underlying idea behind the Elo? Is just to say, okay, I have this huge payoff matrix, okay, P of size n times n, okay, n being the number of players, and I want to approximate it with a rank 1 model, basically, okay? So I'm going to say, okay, my huge n times n matrix is just going to be summarized by something with a one parameter per player. Okay. Yes.
Quentin, you were saying
Yes.
you have a payoff matrix. Didn't you say that you
Yes.
have the histories of winning and losing of games?
No. I don't take histories here. I just average it over a fixed time window, for instance.
I understand. Okay.
Yes. Yes. And so we have this like some kind of empirical payoff matrix, and the question is how can you like approximate it with a lower dimensional model? And this is the idea of the Elo score. Okay, so instead of having like n times n parameter, you just assign one parameter per player, and you try to approximate this matrix. Okay, so here sigma it's a sigmoid function, and psi is just another growing function. So basically what you want to say is that the probability of player I beating player J is just an increasing function of the difference of the Elo score. Okay. And for chess, this increasing function is a sigmoid, and for StarCraft, it's another increasing function. It's like the CDF of the normal distribution. But the idea is the same. Okay. You just have your empirical payoff matrix of size n times n, and you want to reduce it to something smaller with a lower rank matrix. And so here I took the ratings a while ago now, but the idea of this Elo score is that it has some predictive power. Okay, so if you take the Elo score of Magnus Carlsen, okay, the #1 chess player, and you take the Elo score of Levon here, Elo score gives you like a probability of winning for Magnus against Levon. Okay. Yes.
Where's this divisor coming from? This like I see the difference in the Elo scores. I see this also divided by 400.
Yeah, it's just you're rescaling so that the numbers are easier for us to grasp.
I see.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the same in the Elo score, like in the update of the Elo, they use this constant, but on paper it does not matter.
Okay, makes sense.
And yeah, and so that's for chess, and for StarCraft, it's the same. If you take like the #1 player, you can have the probability of winning against like liquid mana here. And yes, this is the main point, is that the Elo score is giving you some predictive power for future matchups. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so I will just go to the formal definition of the Elo. Okay, so we have our empirical payoff matrix. So basically, we average over, I don't know, 6 months the win and lose between each pair of players, and we want to approximate it using this matrix. Okay, and the idea is very simple. It's just to say that, okay, I'm going to minimize basically the distance between this probability matrix and the sigmoid of my two numbers, and I'm going to optimize about these two numbers. Okay, that's very like standard, I would say, in machine learning, and this is how it is defined, like what is called like this stationary Elo score in some sense. Sometimes it has other name like Bradley, Terry models, something like this. But I think that it's something which is important to say here, that it's not like the standard Elo score when you have some online updates going on, even though it's related. Of course, here I really take a stationary situation in the sense that, for instance, I have boats playing an infinite times against each other, and so I have the perfect like Elo score. There is no like dynamics and evolution of the strength of the player in time. So just there is a comment here.
It's explaining the 400 term.
Give you plus extra probability. Okay. 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 I mean, just if you don't have this 400, it would just give you like smaller number, which would be like harder in practice to grasp. But okay. Okay. So yeah, I think it's very important to state here that we are in this kind of stationary regime where you assume that player has reached a level and you make them play an infinite number of time against each other, which of course it's not true for chess and StarCraft. Yes.
I was wondering, when you say like the U elo, like it
Yes.
belongs to something.
Yes.
So it can have a range of values or something?
Yes. So this is here in the comments is there is no unicity of the elo score since it's defined up to a constant.
Mhm.
So yes, what really matters is the difference between the elo score and not like the absolute value of the elo score.
Cool. Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome. Other questions? Okay. Okay, so just now let's talk about the limitation of the elo score. Okay, first, I think one key assumption of the elo score is that the underlying game is transitive. Okay, if Magnus beats me, I beat like Simon, then Magnus is going to beat Simon, okay, for instance. So that's one key property. I mean, one key property because okay, since the predictive power is given by the elo score, you must have this kind of transitivity. Okay, so let me just define more properly what is a transitive game. So it's just what I just say. Okay, if you have 3 players, if I beats J and J beats K, then I beats K. And Go and chess are considered mostly to be transitive. Okay, even though it can be, you might have some cyclic aspect to the style of play, etc. But StarCraft is considered to have a strongly cyclic component. So I'm not a specialist of StarCraft, but from what I heard, you have multiple races with like advantages and against each other. So hence you have this cyclic component, and you also have some cyclic component due to the strategy you can employ. So maybe you know more about me than this, but I would say that Gauthier would be the person to ask if you have some doubts. And I think this is deeply related to the success of like safe player reinforcement learning in Go, chess, because since Go and chess are mostly transitive games, if you're using self-player reinforcement learning algorithm and at times t+1, your agent is better than the agent at times t. Since your game is transitive, you know that at the final time, your agent is better than the agent at time 0. Okay, because of this transitive property. And for StarCraft and like even for simpler games, for example, like rock, paper, scissors, since it's cyclic, I mean, you could learn like rock and then paper and then scissors, etc. in cycle. So it has been a problem to apply this self-player reinforcement learning to cyclic games such as StarCraft. It's not the only problem for StarCraft, from what I understood. Yes, go ahead.
You may not know the answer to this question because it's quite StarCraft specific. Is it the case that the best StarCraft agents are still not beating the best humans, or they don't beat the best humans after the humans get to play against them multiple times?
So
like, are they exploit? Is it just that they're like, yeah?
I don't know. I mean, I take a look. I specifically looked for this answer before the talk, but even by looking at it, it's not clear. Like the answer seems not to be clear. So apparently, they do not beat like top player yet. That's why I put like an approximation, because for me it's unclear. like the definition for it.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's orthogonal to your talk. I was just curious if you knew.
I'm curious as well if some of you know, but maybe Voidshare should know about it. But yes, from what I read, it's still not the top layer, I think, at least. But yeah, there are plenty of other challenges in StarCraft that there is not in chess anymore. Like it's a real-time environment, etc. So yeah.
Got it.
Okay, so this is one of the, like, I would say, obvious limitation of the Elo score is that if you have a cyclic game, you do not have a proper order or proper ranking. So the Elo score is not going to giving you something which has some powerful or meaningful predictive power, okay, because of this cycle. And so another limitation, which is, I think, pretty nice, is that even if your game is transitive, okay, in the sense that, I take this simple 3-player game, the payoff matrix of a 3x3 player games, and player 1 is beating everyone, okay, because player 1 is beating player 2 and player 3, because delta is taken in this range, okay, and player 2 is losing against player 1, it is winning against player 3, okay. So this is just a very simple example of transitive games, and if you use the Elo score on this transitive game, depending on the range of delta gamma here, you can see that the Elo score can fail to rank players properly, okay. And when you think about it, it's kind of obvious, okay, because the Elo score is minimizing something else, okay. If I show you, if I recall the definition of the Elo score in here, you really want to minimize this objective function here, okay. So it really want to stick to this objective function, and if you have something which is slightly different, like in here, the problem here is that for this range of delta gamma values, it means that player 1 is beating player 2 by a slight margin, but player 2 is beating player 3 by a huge margin, okay? It's high probability. So since you want to fit to this probability matrix, the Elo score is not going to properly rank players, even if the game is fully transitive. So to our sense, this was, yes? Yes?
I think you might be muted, Si. Or we can't hear you.
Okay.
If you want to type your question in the chat, we can read it. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Oops. Okay. Okay. So I just talked about like transitive and cyclic games. So I'm just going to define what we think is a cyclic game here, just to be clear, like, from a mathematical point of view. It's just that there exists an ordering or a shuffling of the player, such that you have like basically player 1 beating player 2 beating player 3, etc., and player, let's say, n beating player 1. I think this is like our definition of a cyclic game. And yes, some property, okay, an Elo game is just gonna be fully transitive, and cyclic this game, which was presented at the beginning, is gonna be cyclic, but that's not the main point. But so the main question that we were interested in this project was, okay, is it possible to quantify the amount of cyclicity and transitivity in some games? Okay, I just give you this empirical payoff matrix, and can you tell me if it's transitive or if it's cyclic? And I think something which is very important in our methodology and method is that it really depends on this empirical payoff matrix P. Okay, it's not depending on the game. So this means that it could depend. It could be that the game for some range of people, I don't know, for low-ranked people, it's going to be transitive and not for higher ranked people, since it really depends on the empirical payoff matrix that we get. So it's not only depending on the game, okay, but on how the game is played by the population, basically. Okay, so we just go to the proposed approach. So yes, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe we can go back to Sai's question. His question was, why does it fail with the gamma being high and the delta being high and gamma being low-ish?
Yes, so I can comment on this. So basically here what we're saying is that player 1 is beating player 2, okay, with a small margin because gamma is small in this region, okay. But in this region, delta is high, so you have player 2 is beating player 3 with a high margin, okay. And since you want to like minimize the difference between like this P, gamma, delta, and the difference of the Elo score. So for instance, going to be like U2 minus U1, something like this. You want to minimize this with a given loss function, for instance. Okay, so since player 2 is beating player 3 with a high margin, it's going to give an artificially high Elo to player 2 to account for this like high probability of beating player 3. Okay, I can. Okay, is it clear?
Why would it be artificially high? Like maybe the difference is that much.
Yes. So basically, what you want to, what you're gonna want to minimize is gonna say, okay, I want like, okay, I want 3 numbers, okay, U1, U2, and U3. So the Elo score of each player, and I want them. I want what? I want U2 minus U1 to be so the sigmoid of this to be as close as possible to gamma, and I want U3 minus U2 to be as close as possible to delta, okay? And okay, basically I'm going to minimize the sum of these two things over, okay, so I'm going to take, okay, so I want somehow to enforce this condition, so you say you want this to be, okay, it's not going to be okay, let me explain it better. So okay, you want gamma to be close to this, okay, Elo score of player 2 minus Elo score of player 1, and you want delta to be close to Elo score of player 3 minus Elo score of player 2. So what you're going to do is you're going to minimize the binary cross entropy between this guy and this guy, plus this guy and this guy, okay? And if this one is high, which is what is in here, it will enforce okay, see, it's in the other way around, sorry, it's U3 minus U2, okay, I'm gonna do it, but it will enforce it will enforce U2 to be large. That's what I'm saying. Because, yes.
But these can be updated after every game, right? So these ratings won't remain constant. So when after every game, if you update them, then the probabilities will also change.
Okay, so this is what I was saying at the beginning, is that we really are in this stationary regime where we assume that each player has reached his level, and there is no notion of dynamic Elo or updating the Elo after each game. Okay, we really assume that all the players have a given level and they won't change. Okay, is it that it doesn't work because you also need okay, so just to go back to this example, okay, so the question is, yes, player 1 has to beat player 2 and player 3, okay, but I think that the problem really comes from the fact that player 2 is beating player 3 with a high margin, whereas player 1 is beating player 2 with a small margin. Okay.
Is
So basically,
is it sufficiently intuition just that like we can drive the loss down more by like splitting two of the players apart further than bringing two of them closer together? And so like, you know, there's it's just an incompatibility between the loss function and the ranking.
yes, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yes. Okay. So is it okay or okay? Just well, okay. Thanks. Okay. Okay. So what we're gonna do is that we're gonna take this game. Okay, this is defining a pair of matrix. So I just take two vector u and v, and this is giving me a game. Okay, so there is no constraint on u and v, and okay, you have a game. And so what we're saying is that if you take this game, it cannot be something in between cyclic and transitive. Okay, either it's transitive, either it's cyclic. And I think that's one of the main points of the paper is that if you take this very simple game, it's either going to be transitive or cyclic. Okay, you have no other choice. Okay, and this is going to depend on some property of the game. Okay, of the convex hull of the point. But I think that the main point is really to understand that this is a very simple game, very simple, like synthetic game, and it's either going to be transitive or cyclic. You have no other choice. And what we say is that, okay, if you take a general game, okay, like a zero-sum game, like we did before, like you take lead chess data or StarCraft data, then you can decompose this game as a product or as a sum of this very simple game we had before. Okay. So why? Because okay, you take your zero-sum game. Okay, so like this is like between 0 and 1. Okay, and if you take the inverse of the sigmoid of this probability matrix, you obtain what is called a skew symmetric matrix. Okay, I'm going to recall it. So you take your game, you take the inverse of the sigmoid of it, and this is skew symmetric. Okay. And okay, I don't know if you're aware about it, but maybe you're more aware about the decomposition of symmetric matrices, but you have something which is very similar, which is the decomposition of skew symmetric matrices. Okay, and so you can decompose this skew symmetric matrix as a sum of vector. Okay, so for a symmetric matrix S, for instance, you would have that you can decompose it as a sum of lambda I, EI transpose, for instance. And you have the same thing for skew symmetric matrices, so except that the decomposition is slightly more complex, and it's this one. Okay. So basically, what we're saying is that you take your empirical pair of matrix, you take the inverse of the sigmoid here, and then you can decompose this skew symmetric matrix, and this will give you some kind of somehow the product of a large number of games. And these simple games are either transitive, either cyclic. Okay, this is what we're saying. And something which is, I think, very cool, and it's obvious when you think about it, but it's still nice, is that you have this kind of product of games, of small games, and at most one of these games is going to be transitive in the product. Okay. And okay, this is because like this vector should be a basis. Okay, so it's a simple like corollary of this decomposition, but it's still a very nice property. So this means that okay, you take your games, you have this decomposition, and it's similar to the PCA. You know, you have some kind of magnitude in front of it, so you can take the largest component if you want, and you can say if this largest component is transitive or cyclic, which I think is cool. So I know this is a bit dense. So if you have any question, just like go for it. If you want me to re-explain because it wasn't clear, just tell me.
I have basically
Yes.
a notational question.
Yes.
Looking at the expanded, like the expression for the decomposition of the skew symmetric matrix,
Yes.
we have UL VL minus
Yes.
VL UL.
Yes.
This looks like so these are vectors.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly.
And it looks like the difference between the dot product of two vectors. Oh, these are the outer products.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. These are outer product. Exactly. Exactly.
Right, we're good. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay. So, do you have like question for this or?
I didn't. I missed. I thought I didn't notice it was an outer product. So that was this.
Yeah. So it's just to clarify for everyone. So this is like a matrix. Okay, this is like a vector times another vectors. So this is an outer product. So basically, this means that you can have an arbitrary, how to say, approximation of your matrix. Okay, I was saying before that the yellow score is somehow rank 1 approximation of your pair of matrix, and this way you can have an arbitrary rank 2, like 4, 6 as you want, approximation of your pair of matrix. I think that's the main like takeaway from this. And at most, one of these games is going to be transitive. So just for instance, to be like maybe clearer, like you have this decomposition here with this magnitude here. If you just take like the pair of eigenvector with the largest magnitude, you obtain that your game is almost something like this. Okay, so let's say lambda max u v transpose minus v u transpose. Okay, and you simply look at if this game is transitive or not, and okay, this will give you a good guess if the game is cyclic or transitive. Yeah, that's mostly it. So do you have questions on it? Because I know it's complex, so just don't be shy to make me repeat or just to say that something wasn't clear. Like this is like complex. This is a bit messy, but there is nothing like fancy behind it. Yes.
Can you hear me well?
Yes, very well.
Hi, awesome. Yeah. Do you have any intuitions what these matrices and these vectors actually represent? Are they like eigenvectors or what is exactly what they do represent?
So they are pairs of singular vectors. This is my guess. Like like singular value decomposition, and there are some sense like pairs of singular vectors. This is my guess. But yes, really, like these vectors go by pair. Yes. Yes. Yes.
I think that was an accident.
Okay. It's okay. It's okay. 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 So just like go. So yes. So it's just to say. So what we do is that to compute these two vectors, instead of approximating like the pair of matrix with like a rank 1 vector, okay. So let's say ui minus uj. We just take this like rank 2 approximation, for instance. But you can go further. Okay, you can take rank 3, 4, 5 if you want. But just to draw a parallel with the Elo score, which is right here. So in the Elo score, you only optimize above a vector, so you have one score per player. And here we are optimizing with 2 vectors, so you have 2 scores per player, which they're not really scores, but you have 2 parameters per players. And okay, it's much more complex from the optimization point of view because okay, this was at least convex, I guess, so you can compute it like pretty efficiently and everything. But okay, since we require that U and V are orthogonal, which is important because it comes from this like some kind of eigenvalue decomposition, then this problem becomes highly non-convex. Okay, highly non-convex. So it's a pain to optimize, but okay, we managed to do it yes, somehow efficiently, let's say. And okay, I'm just gonna just if we go back to this simple transitive game and we apply our like techniques. So like so we have the same tricky family of 3x3 player transitive games, and now what is giving you the probability of winning or losing is this score, and it's always on the right side, on the right side. So you have some kind of predictive power even of this simple and tricky transitive games. So let me just go to this, and maybe I will go back to this at the end, but I just want to show some experiments. I think it's a more visual. Okay. Can you see my screen or? Okay, yeah, this is what I want to see. Okay, so this is like what I wanted to show. So here I'm interpolating between an ELO game, okay, which is like very transitive. You can see from the color maps, and player 1 is beating everyone. Player 2 is losing against player 1 but beating everyone else, etc. So you have an order. You have a very transitive order. And in this game, it's a dice game, so fully cyclic game. Okay. And the question is what's happening if we apply this decomposition. So as I was saying, we're applying this kind of PCA for games, and you obtain 2 scores in some sense, UI and VI per player. And so what we are plotting here is for each player, we are plotting this, okay, for each player here, I, okay, and we are displaying it here. And so what you can see is that for the ELO game, it recovers something which is very similar to the ELO. Okay, you have one of the parameter which is fixed, which does not move, which means that like the prediction is going to be for between player I and J is given by this quantity. Okay, let me write it here. And if all the VI are constant, it just means that you recover something like the ELO. Okay. Okay, so this is it, and you can see that I'm interpolating between the ELO game and this game with a given ratio, and you can see that when the ratio is 0.5, you exactly have this. And the main point of our theorem, like I did not insist on it, but is that the convex hull of all these points, if it does not contain 0, then your game is transitive. Okay. So this is the case here, here you have a border case, and here you are considered as cyclic. Okay, and I think this is a pretty nice illustration of what these like scores are doing. They can tell you by looking at the convex hull of all these points if the games are transitive in some sense or cyclic. Okay, do you have like questions on this slide?
So in the paper you refer to games as like mostly transitive or mostly cyclic. Is the
exactly
this mostly term like how much of the
most mostly in the sense that it's the first component of this like decomposition. That's why we say, oh, you have this term decomposition. If you just take the first component, it's cyclic or transitive. So it's mostly cyclic or mostly transitive. That's why.
Okay, cool.
Because
Thank you.
You can, yes, because I mean, in our interpretation, you can be in between, etc. So that's why we say mostly cyclic or mostly transitive by looking at its first component.
Got it.
Yeah, and I just wanted to just go back on this remark that okay, with this like formulation in here, okay, like as I was saying, like the probability of winning or losing is given by like the sigmoid of ui vj minus uj vi. Okay, and what you can see is that if you go here and that, for instance, all the vj are positive, okay, not constant but just positive. In fact, you can simply factorize by vi vj, like here. And if these two guys are positive, you obtain some new notion of strength, okay, some new notion of Elo score, which is like the ratio of UI over VI, which I think is nice. Okay, so if all the VJ are positive, then you can have two notions of score, which are basically this notion of strength, and another notion which is how often you beat a lower rated player, for instance, which would be your VI or VJ. So it's just to say that, okay, in this specific case where all the VJ you found are positive, you can have a nice interpretation of this UI VI score. One is that the ratio gives you this notion of strength, and VI is giving you the notion of how often you beat lower rated player, for instance. And okay, and as for the usual Elo score, from this you can derive online updates, but I'm just not gonna go over it. So I will just continue the experiment. So we did it with this data. I don't know if you know like this data set from the spinning top paper. But so basically it's a data set of player playing against each other. Okay, like bots playing each other, like simplified version of Go, simplified version of like poker or the Bloto game. And again, what's very important here is to take a look at is 0 in the is the convex hull of all the points here, so which is this in black. Okay, so the convex hull of all the points. Does it contain 0 or not? And I have to say that for this data set, the conclusion might be like unclear. But yeah, the conclusion might be unclear because here, for instance, 0 is often in the convex hull of all the points. So it would say that Go is mostly cyclic, but it's not. From this dataset, I mean, it's a bit unclear. But something which I think is more interesting is like datasets from human data. Okay, so basically we scrapped real Lichess data and real StarCraft data, and okay, we had to do some kind of massive pre-processing on this data because it's super dirty. Okay, first, so you have a lot of noise in this Lichess data and StarCraft data. First, you don't have access to all the matchups between the players. Okay, you only have access to like a sparse, all the blue points here are the matchups you have access to. So this is very sparse. This means that you only have access to a fraction of the matchup, basically. So this is painful. And people might not play a lot between each other. Okay, so the estimation of the empirical matrix you have might be very noisy. And so we had to like filter a bit by how much we want this matrix to be noisy. So here this number refers to the number of matchups, the minimal number of matchups between players we require to avoid it to be too noisy. And the last thing is that, yes, we had to take, I don't remember exactly, but I think 1 year or 6 months of games So obviously the level of the player is like changing and moving. And so especially if you have young players, they're much stronger at the end. Okay, so we had to average over a given period of time, and of course it's a crude approximation of it. So, but I think it's really interesting to like real data. And so what we see is that if you filter enough, like the number of payoff, the number of matchup between player you require, okay, you can obtain something like this here, for instance, where you have this kind of straight line, which means that the game at some point, if you filter it enough, even here you can see this straight line is transitive, okay, because like the convex hull of the point does not contain 0 for chess at least. But for StarCraft, I mean, I really try to like require a super high number of matchups between players, like even with this like crazy number of matchups between players, it's hard to obtain this kind of straight lines that you have here, which would mean that the game is completely transitive. Okay, so this is just a very like weak way of suggesting that StarCraft is more cyclic than lichess. Okay, but this is very like I would say for this part it's very visual. Okay, I will go to some more quantitative results later in the 5 last minutes, but it's just a visual way of saying, okay, we have strong reason to believe that StarCraft, the weights played by player is more cyclic than chess. So do you have questions on it, or? Yes?
I just have a quick comment. We are in the last 5 minutes.
Okay, 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 perfect. This is my last slide. Okay, so these are quantitative results on the game, I guess, from the Gauthier paper, so from the spinning top paper. And so basically, what we did is that we took these games here. We hide like 20% of the entries, and we try to recover these entries using our models. Okay. So this is yes, this is what we did, and we did for like all the game from the spinning top paper. And so what is displayed here? It's basically 1 over the MSE. Okay, so 1 over how well you recover your probability. Okay, so let's say like the higher, the better. Okay, and here in blue, it's the ELO score, and okay, everything is normalized by the MSE of the ELO score. So okay, the blue bar is always at 1. Okay, if you take a look at it. And so I think what's nice in this game, okay, it's first you can see that for Go, for this Go game, for instance, there is no need to add some extra components, okay, which would potentially take into account the cyclicity, etc. Okay, but you can see that the ELO score, like for Go, it's perfect because okay, the game is assumed to be transitive, and there is no need to add these new components which would take into account the cyclicity, etc. Okay, so I think this is one of the interesting things to notice. Another thing to notice is that if you take random games here, then adding more parameter just yields to overfitting. Okay, so you have lower performance with these more like parameters you're adding. But what's interesting is that for the Blotto games here, which are considered to be mostly cyclic, okay, then here adding more parameters. So here, if I take like just 1 game, the more you go to the right, the more parameter you have. Okay, it's so adding this additional parameter accounting for the cyclicity is giving you like better predictions for the Blotto games here, for instance, like check here. And I think this is a nice illustration of what we were saying, is that basically for the Go game, there is no need to, like, for this Go game at least, yes, there is no need to, let me do it properly. to add extra parameter accounting for cyclicity because it's transitive. But for blotter games, okay, it can help to have this extra parameter. Okay, and I think it's very related to this paper. I don't know if you like read it. It's reevaluating evaluation from David Balduzzi. Basically, we are heavily building on this paper and rehashing / explaining better what they were doing. Okay, and as a summary, we just show some limitation of the Elo score for transitive and cyclic games, and we study in detail this new kind of game that we call this game. So in between the Elo and like usual cyclic games, and this yield in some cases to an extension of the Elo score, and we have a paper and some code. So feel free to give us feedbacks or any comments. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. We're at the end of our time slot.
Okay.
So I know a bunch of folks are about to leave, so maybe we can take one question before this ends. If somebody wants to take this chance to ask a question. Yes, Kevin.
I got one. Do you have any ideas for how this would be used practically for, like, recreational gamers and stuff? Thanks.
So I tried it on real chess data, like to predict scores, but yes, I tried it. I tried the quantitative analysis on real chess data, but it didn't work because it's so noisy. And I know that there's a paper from like 10 years ago trying to improve the Elo scores to better predict the matchup, and basically they have to regularize everything like as hell because it's so noisy. So no, it did not work. Like, and I don't think it's going to be applied for like ranking players. But I know that VoidShare is using it at Isomorphic Lab right now. But I'm not allowed to know why it's useful for. But apparently it's useful for him. So.
Sorry, what did you say he uses it for?
So is that Isomorphic Lab is like AlphaFold company.
Oh yeah.
Medication. So I guess to predict the combination of like drugs or something like this. But yes, I don't know basically what he's using it for.
Well, I want to, thank you for this presentation. I'm going to pause the recording now and log off. If you want to stay longer, folks have questions, you're welcome to, but I have to